Okay, we also have captions available if anyone needs those. You can click them down on your menu. But anyway, welcome to the Broward MPO's DBE Goal Update webinar. So this is something that happens every 3 years when we do the update of our DBE goal. So thanks for joining us. This is all part of the public consultation period that we do DBE goal. So first things first, I just want to do some introductions. I'm Carl Ema. I'm the Administrative Services Manager and Title VI Coordinator with the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I also have some colleagues and some of our consulting team on the line, so I'll let them introduce themselves now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, everyone, and we thank you for your time and participation. My name is Norma Corridor, and I am with the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization, and I am your DBE Liaison Officer.
I'm Elizabeth Shook. I'm with Benish, and we are the consultant for the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Sophia Thornton. I am also a consultant for the Broward MPO on this task.
I think that's it. So thank you for those introductions. Now, before I hand things over to Sophia, who's going to dive into the DBE goal, which is why we're all here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the MPO and what it is we do. So I won't read this slide, but the Broward MPO, if you've never heard of us, you'd be forgiven. There's not many people who have heard of us. We're not exactly a household name, but we do fill an important role in this area, and that's really the prioritization of federal transportation dollars when they come down here. So we have a 25-member board made up of elected officials from our municipalities, Broward County government, the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, or Tri-Rail, as you might know them, and that is their goal is to prioritize transportation projects that are federally funded in this area. So that's a long time ago, before MPOs. It was just someone in Washington who would decide what to build in your backyard, and so that was obviously not desirable. So MPOs got started, and so that is our board and what they do. I don't have enough time to talk about all of the various products that we have. We do a lot of things here at the MPO, but I'll just touch on some of the core products, our bread and butter, and then I'll turn things over to Sophia. So the first one, if you see this graphic, this box here, I'll go from the outside in. So the first thing we do is our public participation plan, or PPP, and this really dictates how we conduct outreach for all the various product development cycles that we go through. So I mean, today is a good example. We had to post this webinar for DBE. Sometimes we have to do a newspaper advertisement. And how many days in advance do you need to do that? So everything regarding outreach for any of our products is included in the PPP, and really all of us are, at least part-time public involvement staff to a degree. So that's the PPP. Next one is strategic business plan. Not every MPO has a strategic business plan, but we do. And what it's used for is we interface with our board and get feedback from them. So we have a retreat every 2 years. We sit down and get their input on where they want to see the agency going. And we use that input to develop 2- and 5-year success markers. And those are built into the strategic business plan. And they just help keep us focused as we go through, the typical transportation planning process, so that we're not, we're still meeting the needs and desires of our board and keeping those things in mind. The next one, Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP. This is a pretty simple one. This is a fancy word for budget. This is just our budget. We update it every 2 years. If you go into it, it's organized by task, which outlines all of the activities that we do. It has the funding amounts that are allocated, and it also has the funding sources. So everything we do at the agency is listed there. These last three at the top here are really planning heavy. So the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, it's also commonly referred to as a long-range transportation plan. And that's, as the name suggests, this is looking out over like the next 20 years. And it's updated every 5 years. It's a big update when it happens. We're actually going through it right now. And we sit down with all 31 of the cities in Broward County. And we make sure that we have an understanding of their transportation projects. And because, when they're looking for funding, they really need to be in our document in order to be eligible. So, and it takes a long time to get things funded. So that's one of the reasons, or one of the activities that goes on when we update this. We also, there are funding programs that are established through the MTP. So there's other things that are happening every time it gets updated. And it really sets the stage for a lot of our other planning efforts. So very important, arguably our most important core product. From there, after you have your projects in the MTP, they go to the next two items, which is this is the multimodal priorities list. This is sort of a bridge between the, you could say the MTP has a lot of ideas in it and a lot of concepts, project concepts. Now we're going to try to, get some of those things actually funded. So the way to do that is first get them into here. This list here is sorted amongst the funding programs that are established in the MTP. So we have, there's bicycle pedestrian, there's transit, there's roads, etc. And so those projects get sorted in here. They go to the board, and they're then approved, and then that goes to the Florida Department of Transportation, then takes it, and they create what they call their work program. And then finally, when they're done with that, we get it back and use the work program to create finally the Transportation Improvement Program, which I think we have a former staff member on the line. I think you referred to it as the construction program, and that's kind of a good way to look at it, because anything in the Transportation Improvement Program has a very firm funding commitment, and it's moving forward to construction. So yeah, these two multimodal priorities list and TIP, these are both updated annually. There's always projects coming off the top as they're funded and removed, and then there's a whole long queue of projects just waiting to take that spot. So these are constantly updated every year. And that was really it for our core products, just a really high level overview of these. Obviously not touching anywhere near the level of detail and complexity that make up these products. So if you're curious and you want to learn more about any of these, please go to our site, browardmpo.org. I also wanted to just share before I hand things over to Sophia. If you're interested in doing business with us, I just wanted you all to know where our solicitations page was. So if you go to browardmpo.org, you'll see this page here, and you hover over work with us, and then you'll get this menu that appears under it. Go down to procurement and click that link, and it'll take you to our procurement page. Once you're there, if you see on the left side navigation, you'll see current, upcoming, and past solicitations. So there's where you can see kind of what we're looking to pursue in the future, and if that's something of interest to you. But I wanted to make sure I shared that with you all today. Anyway, that's enough about the MPO. I'm going to hand things over to Sophia now, who's going to really talk about our primary purpose for being here today.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the tangled world of the FTA DBE goal. So starting off, the DBE goal stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, which is generally a for-profit small business that is owned and or managed by socially or economically disadvantaged individuals. So when we're talking about this DBE goal, that's what we're referring to. And this is required by the Code of Federal Regulations because the Broward MPO is a direct recipient of Federal Transit Administration funds. So you'll hear me saying FTA throughout this presentation. And when I say FTA, I'm talking about the Federal Transit Administration. So I'd like to note that the Broward MPO does not establish its own DBE goal for Federal Highway Administration contracts or Federal Highway Administration assisted contracts. So that's a different agency. And for those contracts, the MPO uses a goal established by the Florida Department of Transportation, which is another fun acronym I'm going to be throwing around. We call that the FDOT. And that goal for those FHWA contracts is 10.65%, and that's valid through September 30th of this year. So the FDOT is going to update that goal later in August, but as a part of the Broward MPO's goal setting process, we are not setting any contract specific goals. Rather, this DBE goal is a general goal for the overall 3-year period for which it's valid. And if at any point the MPO doesn't seem to be on par with meeting that goal, then goals can be set for specific contracts to reach this DBE goal percentage. So moving on to the next slide. Like we said, as a direct recipient of FTA funds, the Broward MPO is required to set this DBE goal every 3 years. And this goal is due to the FTA this year, August 1st. And then the FTA is tasked with reviewing the methodology used to calculate the goal to determine whether they reject or approve that methodology. So the FTA does not actually reject or approve that final goal percentage necessarily, but they look at the methodology we use to get to that goal percentage, and then they determine, yes, this was a valid method for determining your goal. So next slide, we talk about the primary intentions of this DBE program, and the intention of setting the DBE goal and having the DBE program is to provide a resolution of any potential discrimination against DBEs, ensuring a level playing field for DBE firms to have fair competition for these FTA contracts, improve the flexibility and efficiency of the MPO's DBE program, and lastly, to reduce burdens on small businesses in that competition process to potentially receive an award of federally assisted contracts. So next slide. The MPO's DBE goal is a 2-step process. First, we calculate a base goal that is determined using anticipated FTA contracting opportunities that are coming up, and then identifying the number of currently certified DBE contractors in the Broward MPO's market area. And then we further subset that down in a second step, looking at historical performance, whether the current goal has historically been met or even exceeded, to see if that should be adjusted in any way. But before we get into the step 1 and 2 calculations, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming contracts that have FTA assisted funding that are coming up in the next 3 years that are going to be available to consultants. So as we have on the slide, there are 2 FTA assisted contracts that the Broward MPO has identified coming up in the 2024 to 2026 fiscal years. One of those is the Mobility Hub, which is something identified through the Broward MPO's long-range planning process. This concept is based on land use and transit criteria. The mobility hubs are meant to be a transit access point with frequent transit service, high development potential, and the Broward MPO has identified that the work or industry work types that will be contracting for that include planning, public engagement, and construction type activities. And then the other upcoming contract is funding for transit fare technology and mobile application improvements. So now we can get into the goal calculation process even further on the next slide. So like we mentioned, the FTA is going to review and approve, hopefully, the methodology that we chose to use to calculate this goal. Federal regulations require that the MPO, the goal calculated and used by the MPO reflects current unique market conditions. So the MPO can't, for example, just go take the generic 10% national goal from the US Department of Transportation. They can't just simply say, well, we'll use the last goal that we had. And also, you can't just look at the historical DBE participation and say, well, we'll just take that percentage. And additionally, it also needs to include the required consultation and publication requirements, which we're partially fulfilling now. So next slide. Now, the fun part. So the first step of the DBE goal calculation includes several sub-steps already, and super fun and complicated. So we've tried to make this flow chart a little more explanatory here, but the first step, step 1A, identifies the upcoming FTA assisted contracts, which is the ones that we discussed on the previous slide. And now for each contract, we've identified a North American Industry Classification System code, NAICS. And this code is basically just a fancy label that we put on it to say this is the type of work that would be associated with this upcoming contract. So we've also looked at specifically the existing DBE vendors that work within these NAICS codes. And we've identified the overall number of vendors or firms that exist in the market area for these NAICS codes. So the number of DBEs for this code and the total number of firms for this code to kind of create a percentage. And with the two upcoming FTA assisted contracting opportunities that we identified, there are 6 primary categories that we foresee coming up with the NAICS code. So that's public relations, highway, street, bridge construction, data processing, computer programming, engineering, and landscape architectural services. So now we can get to the next slide. So in step 1B, we determine a reasonable market area for the Broward MPO. So consistent with the current DBE goal, we used the same market area the last time. The FDOT District 4, Broward, Indian River, Martin, Palm Beach, and St. Lucie counties are included in this market area. And then it's also included FDOT District 6, which is Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. So in step 1C, the certified DBE contractors in that market area, which are working in the applicable NAICS codes that we pulled from those previous upcoming contracts. We pulled a list of those, and then also we pulled a list of the total number of contractors in the market area in general, not limited to the DBEs. And the data sources for that are the Florida Department of Transportation. They have the list of the DBEs in their Unified Certification Program database. And then the total number of vendors or companies in those different codes we pulled from the US Census Bureau County Business Patterns database. So using those two numbers, we get to step D on the next slide. This takes us to the base goal. So as we can see, we have the number of DBE firms in a specific sector, NAICS code category, and then we have the total number of firms that we estimate to be in that category, and we sum these all up and we get this base goal, which is 4.9%. So that's just the base goal, and now we continue to expand upon this with the next slide. Yes, good. So we can't just look at these numbers and percentages and treat them at face value, right? We get that 4.9%, but that's just the number, the average of all firms and all DBEs in all of those identified NAICS categories. However, because different contracts involve different funding amounts, it's more appropriate to weight that base DBE goal by multiplying the percentage of DBEs that we got from the prior slide and multiply that by the percentage of the contracting value for each NAICS category. So this weights the goal further. So for example, if we look at the community engagement line, that one had 2.5% of the total value of the contracting opportunities. So 2.5% of the dollars that are anticipated would go theoretically to community engagement. And then the DBE contractors from the prior slide represented 7.9% of all firms that were DBE in the community engagement category. So we multiply those together, we get 0.2%. And then we use that same methodology across all the different NAICS codes to sum that weighted DBE goal. And that brought us to 6.6%. So yeah, just to, I guess, summarize, some NAICS codes are going to get more dollars than others. Therefore, we should kind of adjust that DBE percentage number based on the amount of funding that we foresee going to those different codes. So next slide. Now we are in step 2. So we also looked at the Broward MPO's historical performance in meeting its DBE goal to determine if maybe the MPO has exceeded in the past the DBE goal. And then in that case, we could say, well, we've actually performed better than expected. And then perhaps we should look at increasing what that goal percentage is. Or we look at the past and we say, okay, this percentage is less than what we would expect it to be. And in that case, we might say it's not appropriate to push that goal further down simply because it historically hasn't been on par necessarily. So in this case, we look at the historical percentage DBE payments, and that goes back to 2020. And that percentage is actually lower than our weighted DBE goal. So as we can see, we have the federal fiscal year 2024 to 2026 DBE goal remaining at the weighted DBE goal percentage of 6.6% because we don't feel that it should be decreased simply because the historical amount hasn't necessarily kept up. So basically 6.6% is where we landed at. And that's all for the calculation portion. You can hit the next slide and we'll just discuss that we have this federal regulation requiring the consultation of affected and interested parties. So making sure that we involve individuals such as DBE employees and enterprises when we develop this goal. And that's a requirement. So this includes providing an optional 30-day public comment period. So for this process, this comment period is from May 5th to June 4th. And that includes commentary for the methodology and the resulting goal. And we also have advertised this goal on the MPO website and in 3 local news agencies, including a Spanish language platform. And lastly, the MPO is required to conduct a direct consultation meeting with interested persons, and this webinar serves to fulfill that direct consultation activity. So now we get to open it up for questions. And if there's no questions, maybe we have a little bit of an introductory mingle session, but feel free to ask me what I just said, because it was a lot.
I can just add one point to clarify. For purposes of the goal, the mobility hubs are all treated as one project, but for purposes of anyone interested in the actual projects, there are 6 mobility hub projects within that category. So 3 are identified: Pembroke Pines, Fort Lauderdale, Coconut Creek, and then 3 that are more towards the latter 3-year period are the locations are to be determined. So you may see contracting opportunities come out for specific mobility hubs. So just wanted to clarify that.
Well, if there's anyone on the line who wants to, I think if you just raise your hand, I should allow you to unmute if you have any questions on the DBE goal. And if not, as I think Sophia mentioned, we do have some additional time here. So I don't know if there's any DBE firms or anyone on the line who would like to introduce themselves, and just maybe we can use this as a little bit of a networking session. So again, I think if you just raise your hand, I should be able to unmute you.
For any reason the hand raising isn't working, maybe there's a chat function. Actually, I don't see a chat box,
I don't think we have, yeah.
so never mind.
I can at least allow, I'm gonna at least click everyone's name and allow them to talk. You don't have to, but that way, if the hand is malfunctioning, that way we can at least give you a chance here. So I should have given you all the ability to unmute. Okay. Well, I guess Sophia and Liz, anything else that we need to cover then?
That means that I gave the most clear and informative presentation, and everyone understood it perfectly.
I wanted to add, if anybody is shy of speaking in public, you can always contact me. My information is right on the flyer. We're glad to talk to you guys one-on-one and explain to you individually what our program is, and how we can help the small firms, and just to get you guys into the action, try to get you motivated to participate in these contracts and these projects. Like Liz mentioned, there's 3 mobility hubs that are coming up. So if you're interested in knowing where they are and what is it that you need to do, please free to contact our office. We're here to help. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think as I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to post this webinar to our website. So if there's something you wish you could hear again, part of Sophia's great explanation, it will be memorialized on our website. So we have the Title VI DBE, I believe it's what we do, Title VI DBE, and we'll have it under the DBE section there immediately after this. So, thank you all for taking the time to attend.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Have a good afternoon and a good weekend.